Hi everyone. In this video I am going to show you the process of actually starting your bug. Now this is just one example because everyone's doing such different critters, but in the previous video I showed you how to make a maquette and the value of making the maquette. I sketched a little bit. I sketched some more to show you how you might start thinking about the different parts of your bug. And in this video, I'm just going to start with a body part. So I was thinking a lot about the head and how it might be there might be some fun ways to create that. So I'm a big fan of drawing out your ideas. Of course, when you actually go to do it in the wire, it might look a little bit different, but my idea kind of originates from how I might construct a cone out of wire, right? But if I alter that cone so that it also curves, and then it could become part of the head, and then other parts of the wire could become the lower pincher as well. And you know what these wires do to kind of create space for the eyes or things like that. I might look to a few different things. I might look to the anatomy of the rhino beetle to see if there are any lines inherent to the bug itself. I might look to the linear patterns that I had you research. But, you know, for now, I'm kind of looking at like, okay, perhaps it's actually two cones. Maybe this is one cone that kind of comes down and creates this sort of plate of the exoskeleton here, and then there's another cone that creates the other part of the pincher and the eye and whatever mandibles exist, right? So as you're building, I would recommend have your maquette handy, have your sketches handy, and have the photographs of your bug handy as well, just so that you have all of these visual references at your disposal. I mentioned at some point that you might want to start acquiring different kinds of wire. So I brought home some baling wire. When you buy it in the hardware store, it comes in a roll like this, usually. Sometimes it's wrapped in some sort of tissue paper. And it's heavy. And the reason why I like using the baling wire is because even though it's a little bit harder to wrangle and it will leave like a greasy residue on your fingers, when you put it into a shape, it will stay in that shape, more or less. I mean, if you're building really, really huge, then you might need to twist wire together. But, you know, I'm just going to cut off some generous lengths. So maybe about 15 inches or so. And I'm thinking that I want the first part of the head to be a good 5 inches. That first curl of the horn. But I'm going to cut off more than I need so that when I construct this part, I have more than enough so that if I need to connect it to what becomes the body, or the thorax and abdomen, that I'm not wishing I had extra length. So that's 3. And 5. And the other thing to think about or to play around with is how you want your lines to appear. For the exercise, remember you were super precise and neat, but I said many times that maybe that's not, maybe it was a challenge, maybe you didn't like the way it looked. So I'm going to show you something that maybe is a bit more playful, a bit more loose. So, at the top of my cone, I'm going to just let all of these baling wire tips gather and have them be uneven lengths, okay? And I'm going to use, maybe I'll use copper. So I have some of the 20 gauge copper. And I'm just going to wind off maybe 2 feet to get me started. And I think the first thing I'll do is just kind of bind them all together and then slowly separate them. And I want them to have kind of random ends. So stagger these so that they're a bit more natural looking. And I'm going to hold a little length of the 20 gauge against the baling wire, and then I'm just going to start to wrap. These feel pretty secure. And I'm not going to be so neat about the way that this is winding on. I'm going to let it be a little bit more loose. And then I'm going to start opening up the wire so that I get more of that cone action. And here's where you start making your artistic choices. Like, as you build a volume like this, do you want the copper wire coming all the way down? Do you want it to be open in here? You know, I'm not entirely sure what I want to do. So what I might do is just wind this a little bit more and just let it hang out. And you can probably just fast forward a lot of this because I'm just kind of evaluating things, looking, deciding what my next move might be. I kind of like the way that these lines, you know, swoop down and around. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this copper wire just so that I can start to hold the baling wire in the shape that I want. So it'll probably be temporary, something that I cut away later. Okay, so now the copper wire is just holding things open in a shape that I can now tweak a little bit and make adjustments without things falling down. So then perhaps my next move would be to create another shape that mirrors what I'm doing with the copper wire to kind of enclose this area. just going to measure approximately. So I'm just measuring off a couple feet of wire. So you can see that, you know, the pieces that I'm making now, they are not spheres, they're not cubes. They are much more organic. So it's up to you to translate how you go from the really rigid geometry into something that better suits your bug. Now I'm cutting these away so that I can make some real connections here. And because I'm using the baling wire and it's really stiff, I would recommend using a much thinner gauged wire. And again, you want to think about your color palette. So I've got copper and I've got baling wire, which is this really dark steel, and I might determine, don't love the way the silver is looking, so maybe I'll just use an even thinner copper wire to make some of these binds. Will we even see them in the end? I don't know. You know, does this get covered with tissue paper? I don't know. These are all creative decisions for you to make. So I'm just winding the copper around and around and around. So there's one junction done. And so now I'm moving to the next kind of swoopy vertical lines. And I'm thinking about how this horn will connect to the other pieces. I don't necessarily want it to be a totally, parallel to the tabletop type of line. Like all of my other lines are very organic, so maybe this starts kind of high and then moves lower. So and sometimes if you're trying to make attachments and you need a third hand, you'll often wish that you did have one. You can always just use a little bit of tape. If you get a connection, you're like, oh yeah, I want to hold that. That's what I want. Then I'm a big fan of using tape, or just another little twisty tie of wire. But before you make any final decisions, I really encourage you to look at it from all the sides. So if I just pinch that there, that can be my third hand while I actually bind over here. Okay. These are the last two joins for the moment anyway. And then I need to decide what these two are going to do. And I think I might just kind of bend them in and up for the time being. Because I'm kind of wishing I had more than 5 of the baling wire strands to make this form. So maybe I can figure out a way to like sneak them up and in and bind them into the copper wire up here. So again, I'm not going to clip these because they might become useful in attaching to other body parts but from this point I would start thinking about how can I construct this area of the horn and how will it connect into what I've already got. But I guess the moral of the story is, you know, don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be, yeah, you just might stumble onto something great. So there will be more parts of this demonstration to come.